3 years after burying his wife, Kang Min-jae, Seoul's most feared infertile mafia boss, stood frozen in a nightclub. Because there, bathed in crimson light, moving like liquid sin across the dance floor, was her, Yara, his dead wife. But those curves, that face, the way she moved, impossible. Is she truly his wife, or a perfect trap built to destroy him? Welcome to Afro-Korean Stories, TV Besties. You don't want to leave this story. Buckle your seatbelts and grab your popcorn and let's scream out our lungs together, because this story will drive you to the edge of your seats. Min-jae's hand dropped to his side, his fingers trembling in a way they hadn't since he'd pulled the trigger on his first kill at 17. Around him, his men waited for orders. A rival gang had been spotted in the VIP section, guns visible under expensive jackets. But he couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the woman who was supposed to be ash and memory and 3 years of suffocating guilt. Boss? His second-in-command, Jae-sung, touched his shoulder carefully. The man had been with him since the beginning, had held him together after the funeral, and knew better than most when Min-jae was about to snap. "Boss, we need to move. Park's men are—" Min-jae shoved past him, pushing through the crowd with the single-minded focus of a predator who'd just spotted prey. Bodies pressed against him, the heat and sweat of Seoul's underground overwhelming, but he felt none of it. His eyes were locked on her. The woman was dancing with friends, her full hips swaying to the beat, her head thrown back in laughter that cut through the music and stabbed directly into his chest. She wore a black dress that clung to every generous curve, the fabric shimmering under the strobing lights, and Min-jae's throat went completely dry. His men were shouting behind him, something about the rival gang, about getting him to safety, but their voices were white noise. Nothing mattered except reaching her, touching her, confirming she was real and not another whiskey-soaked hallucination born from grief and loneliness. When he finally reached her, she was mid-spin, her natural hair wild and beautiful around her face. She turned, and their eyes met. Up close, he could see the differences. A small scar on her collarbone that Yara never had, slightly fuller lips, warmer brown skin, with undertones of deep amber instead of Yara's cooler tones. But the resemblance was devastating enough to make his knees weak. "You," he breathed in accented English, his voice rough and barely audible over the music. She pulled out an earbud, eyebrows raised in question. Her friends had stopped dancing, watching this expensive-suited man with dangerous eyes approach their friend with the intensity of someone drowning. "Excuse me?" Her voice was different, lower, raspier. American accent with a hint of something African underneath, Nigerian maybe, or Ghanaian. Not Yara's soft, soul-raised cadence, not his wife, not his dead wife. But God help him. Something inside him recognized her anyway, something primal and inexplicable that made his pulse race. "I need to know your name." His voice came out rougher than intended, almost desperate, and he saw surprise flicker across her face. She studied him with intelligent dark eyes, taking in his expensive Armani suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, the dangerous edge that clung to him like cologne, the barely restrained intensity in his gaze that probably should have scared her. "And you are?" "Min-jae, Kang Min-jae." Recognition flickered across her face. Everyone in Seoul's underworld knew that name, and apparently even civilian expats had heard the whispers, followed by immediate wariness. Her posture shifted, defensive. "I should go." He caught her wrist gently, careful not to grip hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to keep her there. His thumb pressed against her pulse point, feeling her heartbeat accelerate. "Please." She hesitated, and he saw it. A flash of curiosity, of inexplicable connection that mirrored what was tearing through his chest like shrapnel. Her friends were pulling at her, whispering warnings, but she held his gaze. Zara. Zara Johnson. The name hit him like a fist. Zara. So close to Yara that it felt like the universe was mocking him, like fate was dangling his dead wife's ghost in front of him and daring him to reach for it. Behind him, gunshots erupted. Park's men had made their move. Min-jae's body moved on instinct, pulling Zara against him, shielding her with his body as his men returned fire. She gasped against his chest, her curves pressed against him, and even in the chaos, even with bullets flying, he felt the rightness of holding her. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice cold and commanding, the voice that made hardened criminals obey without question. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. Min-jae's men were better trained, better armed, and more motivated. Park's crew retreated, leaving 2 bodies on the club floor and chaos in their wake. Club security was already moving, knowing better than to call the police when Kang Min-jae's organization was involved. When the danger passed, Min-jae looked down to find Zara still pressed against him, her hands fisted in his jacket, her body trembling. But she wasn't crying, wasn't hysterical. She was breathing hard, eyes wide, but there was steel underneath the fear. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands moving over her carefully, checking for injuries with professional efficiency that barely masked his desperate need to touch her. "No, What the hell just happened?" "Business dispute." He helped her stand, steadying her when she wobbled on her heels. "I need to get you out of here. You and your friends. Now." She should have argued, should have run, should have called the police and gotten as far from him as possible. Instead, she nodded, gathering her friends, and let him escort them out through the back entrance where his cars waited. The next morning, Min-jae sat in his penthouse office overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, Zara's face haunting him in a way nothing had since Yara's funeral. He'd barely slept, spending the night alternating between expensive whiskey and staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had happened to him in that club. He'd let Zara go the night before, watching her disappear into one of his cars with her friends, making sure they all got home safely. But he'd already had Jae-sung pull every piece of information available, legal and otherwise. The file sat on his desk now, surprisingly thin for the digital age. Zara Johnson, 28 years old, American citizen originally from Atlanta, Georgia, moved to Seoul 6 months ago after completing her master's degree in international business and cultural studies. Currently works as a cultural consultant for a mid-sized tech company in Gangnam, helping them navigate the complexities of expanding into African markets. No criminal record, no connection to his world, no connection to Yara except a face that made his carefully constructed walls crumble into dust. She lived alone in a modest apartment in Itaewon, had a close group of expat friends, and spent her weekends exploring the city and taking Korean language classes. She video called her mother in Atlanta every Sunday morning. She was innocent, a civilian, completely removed from the blood and violence that had defined his life since he was 15 years old. He should walk away. His empire was built on control, on emotional detachment since Yara's death. Loving someone in his world was a death sentence. He'd learned that the hard way 3 years ago when the bomb meant for his car had taken her instead. He'd held her broken body in the street, her blood soaking into his clothes, her last words a whispered, "I love you," that still woke him up screaming. After that, he'd become the Reaper, cold, efficient, merciless. He'd killed everyone involved in the bombing, dismantled rival organizations with surgical precision, and built his empire on the bones of his enemies. He didn't feel anymore, didn't want, didn't need. Until last night, when a woman with his dead wife's face had awakened something he thought died with Yara. His hand was already dialing Zara's number before logic could intervene. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cautious and heavy with sleep. "How did you get this number?" "I need to see you again." Not a request, a need that bordered on compulsion, on obsession. Silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of her breathing, with the unspoken acknowledgement that something impossible had happened between them in that club. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured. "Why?" "Because you've awakened something I thought died with her. Because I haven't felt anything in 3 years until you... Because I'm terrified of what you're doing to me, terrified of this need that's already consuming me like fire. Dinner. Tonight. I won't touch you, won't push, just let me see you." Another pause. Longer this time. He could almost hear her internal debate, the war between self-preservation and curiosity. One dinner. Public place. I choose the location. Relief flooded him, so intense it was almost painful. Agreed. And Mr. Kang? No guns, no guards, no mafia business. A small smile tugged at his lips, the first genuine smile in 3 years. I'll try. That evening, Zara sat across from him in a busy restaurant in Hongdae, the youthful energy of the neighborhood providing a buffer of safety and normalcy. She'd chosen well. Crowded, bright, full of college students and young professionals, impossible for him to intimidate or control the way he was used to controlling everything in his world. She wore a burgundy dress that made his fingers itch to touch, her natural hair styled in elegant twists. She dressed carefully, he could tell, wanting to look good but not like she was trying too hard. The dress hugged her curves in ways that made his mouth dry, showcasing the full breasts and generous hips that were so different from the angular models Korean society typically praised. You're staring, she said, sipping her wine with deliberate slowness. You remind me of someone. Your dead wife? Her directness surprised him, but he supposed she'd earned the right after the previous night's chaos. I did my research too, Mr. Kang. I'm sorry for your loss. Min-jae's jaw tightened, old pain flaring like an infected wound. You look like her, but you're not her. Then why am I here? Why are you here? Good question. Why was he here? Why had he rearranged 3 important meetings, canceled a weapons deal worth millions, and sat across from a woman who made him feel dangerously unbalanced in a way even his enemies couldn't manage? Because when I saw you last night, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. The confession escaped before he could stop it, raw and honest in a way he hadn't been with anyone since Yara. And I need to understand why. Zara's expression softened slightly, the wariness giving way to curiosity and something that looked almost like sympathy. I felt it too. That moment in the club before the shooting started. Like recognition, but that's impossible. We've never met. No, we haven't. They talked through dinner, careful conversation that slowly deepened as the wine flowed and the initial awkwardness faded. She told him about growing up in Atlanta, about Sunday dinners with her large Nigerian-American family, about falling in love with Korean dramas during college, and deciding on a whim to actually move to Seoul after graduation. She spoke about her work helping companies navigate cultural differences, her passion for languages, her love for this strange, beautiful city that was so different from home. He told her carefully edited truths about his import-export business, the weight of taking over his father's company at 21, the loneliness of power, the expectations that had shaped his entire life. He didn't tell her about the bodies buried in construction sites across the city, the blood money that funded his legitimate businesses, the enemies who would kill her just for sitting across from him. But he told her about Yara, hesitantly at first, then with increasing openness, how they'd met in university, how she'd been the daughter of another crime family, how their marriage had been arranged but had somehow become real love, how she'd made him believe he could be more than his father's legacy, more than just another gangster. She sounds wonderful, Zara said softly, and there was no jealousy in her voice, just genuine sympathy for his loss. She was, but she's gone, and somehow, impossibly, you're here. Their eyes met across the table, and the air between them crackled with something electric, something dangerous and intoxicating. Zara broke the gaze first, looking down at her empty plate. I should probably run screaming in the other direction, she said, but there was a small smile playing at her lips. Probably, Min-jae agreed. I'm everything your mother warned you about. My mother warned me about a lot of things. I've always been bad at listening. A few days later, Zara found herself agreeing to another meeting, then another after that. Min-jae was intoxicating in a way she'd never experienced, dangerously intelligent, surprisingly funny when he let his guard down, and beneath the cold exterior, she glimpsed something tender and broken that called to her. He was also clearly dangerous in ways she was only beginning to understand. She'd researched enough to know his import-export business was code for organized crime, that the Kong family had controlled Seoul's underworld for 3 generations, that Min-jae himself had a reputation as merciless and calculating. She should run. Any sane woman would run. Instead, she found herself craving his intense attention, the way he looked at her like she was his entire world, like nothing and no one else existed when they were together. He texted her good morning before she woke up. He sent cars to pick her up after work, armored cars with drivers who were clearly bodyguards. He showed up at her apartment with food when she worked late, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. By the end of the first week, he'd shown up at her office with lunch, homemade kimchi jjigae and banchan in expensive containers from his personal chef, because he'd noticed she rarely ate properly during workdays. Her co-workers stared, as the most feared man in Seoul stood in their modern lobby, holding soup like an offering, his expensive suit and dangerous aura completely at odds with the domestic gesture. "You didn't have to do this," Zara said, but she was smiling as she met him in the lobby, touched by the unexpected sweetness. "You need to eat." His eyes traced her curves possessively, hungrily. "You're perfect exactly as you are, but you work too hard and forget to take care of yourself." The compliment made her flush. She was used to being fetishized or criticized for her body, too curvy for Korean beauty standards, subject to countless microaggressions and outright discrimination since moving here. But Min-jae looked at her like she was art, like her curves were something to worship, like he couldn't believe his luck that she existed. "Thank you," she said softly. "This is really sweet." "I'm not sweet." His voice was firm, almost stern. "Don't mistake this for softness, Zara. I'm doing this because you're mine, and I take care of what's mine." The possessiveness should have offended her by the presumption. Instead, heat pooled low in her belly. "I'm not yours. Not yet." The promise in his voice made her shiver. "But you will be." Later that night, Min-jae attended a meeting with Yakuza representatives who'd flown in from Tokyo to discuss territorial boundaries and profit sharing from their joint ventures. His mind should have been on the negotiation. These were delicate discussions that could mean the difference between peace and war. But instead, he kept checking his phone, waiting for Zara's goodnight text like a lovesick teenager. "You seem distracted, Kang-san," the Yakuza lieutenant observed, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "Woman trouble?" Min-jae's expression turned glacial, his voice dropping to the deadly soft tone that usually preceded violence. "My personal life is not your concern." Of course. The lieutenant held up his hands placatingly. "I meant no offense, simply observing that you seem different lately, almost human." Jae-sung, sitting beside Min-jae, tensed imperceptibly. Showing weakness in this world was an invitation for betrayal, for enemies to strike. But before Min-jae could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Zara. "Thank you for lunch today. You're surprisingly sweet for a scary gangster. Sleep well." He found himself smiling before he could stop it, the expression so foreign on his face that the Yakuza representatives exchanged glances. He forced the smile away, schooling his features back into cold indifference. But the damage was done. Word would spread. The Reaper was softening. Someone had found a crack in his armor, and that someone would become a target. The following morning, Amara, Zara's best friend and co-worker, cornered her in the office break room. "Girl, we need to talk about this man." "What man?" Zara asked innocently, but she was smiling into her coffee. "Don't play. Kang Min-jae, the literal Mafia boss who's been courting you like you're a princess and he's a knight instead of a criminal." Zara sobered slightly. "I know it's complicated." "Complicated? Baby, it's dangerous. These men don't play games. His last girlfriend, his wife, died in a car bombing. Are you ready for that kind of life?" The reminder sent ice through Zara's veins. She'd read about Yara's death, seen the news articles and crime scene photos that still circulated online. The bombing had been brutal, public, a message from a rival organization. Min-jae had apparently gone on a killing spree afterwards, systematically eliminating everyone involved. "I know the risks," Zara said quietly, "but when I'm with him, I feel safe, seen. He looks at me like I'm the only person in the world who matters." "That's called love bombing, sweetheart. It's what predators do." "He's not a predator, not with me." Zara struggled to put into words what she felt. "When we're alone, he's different, gentle, almost vulnerable. He talks about his wife, about Yara, and I can see how much he loved her, how much losing her broke him." "And you think you can fix him?" "No, but maybe we can heal each other." She paused, stirring her coffee absently. "And there's this connection I can't explain, like I've known him forever, like we're supposed to find each other." Amara sighed heavily, pulling her friend into a hug. "Just promise me you'll be careful. These men don't let go easily. Once you're in, you're in." Zara nodded against her shoulder, but part of her didn't want him to let go. Part of her was already falling for the broken, dangerous man who brought her soup and looked at her like she was his salvation. That evening, Min-jae took Zara to a private art gallery showing in Gangnam. He'd bought out the entire venue for the night, a casual display of wealth and power that should have seemed excessive, but somehow felt intimate. They wandered alone through exhibitions of contemporary Korean art, Zara's heels clicking softly on marble floors. "This is beautiful," Zara said, studying a large canvas that depicted traditional hanbok patterns dissolving into abstract color, but also completely excessive. "You bought out an entire gallery for one date?" "I wanted you to myself." He stood close behind her, not touching, but close enough that she felt his heat radiating through the air between them, close enough that she had to resist the urge to lean back against him. "I'm a selfish man, Zara." She turned to face him, their bodies inches apart, the painting forgotten. "I'm starting to realize that." The air between them crackled with tension, with weeks of careful restraint reaching a breaking point. Min-jae's eyes dropped to her lips, and she saw the war in his expression. Want versus restraint, need versus fear, desire versus the memory of a dead wife. "I should stay away from you," he murmured, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "Everyone I love dies. Maybe I'm stronger than you think. Or maybe I'm more dangerous than you realize." His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "I want to touch you so badly I can barely breathe. But once I start, I won't be able to stop. I'll want everything, your body, your heart, your soul. I'll consume you." Zara's breath caught. She should step back, should put distance between them, should remember that this man was deadly and damaged and entirely wrong for her. Instead, she leaned into his almost touch. "Maybe I want to be consumed." His control cracked. His hand slid into her hair, cupping the back of her head, and he kissed her with 3 weeks of pent-up longing. The kiss was claiming, possessive, desperately tender all at once. She melted into him, her curves pressing against his hard body, her hands fisting in his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jae pressed his forehead against hers. "You're going to destroy me. Or save you. Same thing in my world." A few days later, everything changed. Zara was leaving her office building, saying goodbye to Amara and heading toward the subway, when a sleek black car pulled up beside her. Not one of Min-jae's cars. She'd learned to recognize those. This was something else. Something wrong. The window rolled down, revealing a handsome man in his 40s with cold, calculating eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "Miss Johnson, I'm Park Dong-wook. I think we should talk about your relationship with Kang Min-jae." Warning bells clanged in her head, loud and insistent. Everything Min-jae had told her about his world crystallized into real, present danger. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please don't insult my intelligence. He's been seen with you repeatedly over the past few weeks. His men follow you everywhere. He's abandoned business meetings to have dinner with you. Park's smile widened, predatory. I'm simply here to warn you. Min-jae is a dangerous man with dangerous enemies. His last woman died because of his choices, because he prioritized love over strategy. Zara's blood ran cold, her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. Who are you? His rival, his enemy, the man who will eventually take everything from him, his territory, his power, his life. Park leaned closer to the window. And you, Miss Johnson, are his newest weakness, a weakness I fully intend to exploit. So consider this your opportunity to leave while you still can. Walk away now, or end up like Yara, collateral damage in a war you don't understand. The window rolled up and the car drove away smoothly, leaving Zara shaking on the sidewalk. Around her, Seoul continued its busy evening rhythm, oblivious to the threat that had just materialized in the form of a man in a black car. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and called Min-jae. 20 minutes later, Min-jae burst into his penthouse to find Zara sitting on his couch, still visibly shaken. He'd broken every traffic law getting here, his heart in his throat the entire drive. She stood when she saw him, and he crossed the space between them in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms with desperate relief. Are you hurt? Did he touch you? No, I'm fine. He warned me. About you, about being with you. Min-jae's arms tightened around her, his mind already racing through options, strategies, and ways to eliminate Park before this escalated further. Tell me exactly what he said. She recounted the conversation, her voice steady despite the fear he could feel trembling through her body. When she finished, Min-jae pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. I need to be honest with you about something. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. Park is right about one thing. Being with me is dangerous. My enemies will see you as a weakness, a way to hurt me. They'll try to use you, hurt you, kill you to get to me. I know. No, you don't. Not really. He paced away from her, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Yara died because I wasn't careful enough, because I thought love could exist separately from my business. But there is no separation. Everything I touch turns to blood and violence. Zara watched him, her expression unreadable. Are you trying to push me away? I'm trying to keep you alive. By pushing me away? Yes. The word exploded from him. Because I won't watch another woman I love die because of me. Silence fell like a blade. Min-jae realized what he'd just admitted, the word hanging in the air between them like a confession and a curse. You love me? Zara's voice was soft, wonder mixing with fear. He turned to face her and she saw everything in his eyes, love and terror and desperate longing. I love you. God help me. I've loved you since that first moment in the club. But love isn't enough in my world. Love is a death sentence. She crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. Then teach me to survive in your world. Don't push me away. Prepare me. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You can either push me away and I'll be vulnerable and alone, or you can keep me close and protect me. Which makes more sense, strategically. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at his lips. You're using logic on me. I'm a consultant. It's what I do. She squeezed his hands. I'm not Yara. I'm not going to wilt and die. If you want me in your life, then teach me how to survive it. Give me bodyguards, teach me to shoot, whatever it takes, but don't shut me out because you're scared. He pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair, breathing in her scent like she was oxygen and he was drowning. I'm terrified. So am I, but I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of Park. The next day, Min-jae sat Zara down and laid out his world with brutal honesty. He told her about his father's empire, built on drugs and weapons and human trafficking. He told her about taking over at 21 when his father died, about cleaning up the organization, eliminating the human trafficking, and focusing on weapons and high-level extortion instead. He told her about the bodies, the violence, the men he'd killed with his own hands. He showed her scars from knives and bullets, told her stories that should have sent her running. And through it all, she listened without judgment, processing everything with the analytical mind that made her good at her job. "So Park wants your territory," she summarized when he finished. "He wants everything. Territory, connections, respect. And he wants revenge because I killed his brother 5 years ago during a turf war." "Is he a credible threat?" Min-jae paused, surprised by the clinical question. "Yes, he's been building his organization quietly, making alliances with groups I've alienated. He's smart, patient, and ruthless." "Then we need to be smarter." She stood, pacing his office like she was analyzing a business problem. "What's his weakness?" "His pride. He wants to beat me publicly, prove he's stronger." "Then we use that. Make him underestimate you. Make him think I'm your weakness when actually, I'm your advantage." Min-jae stared at her, this brilliant, beautiful woman who was treating a gang war like a corporate strategy session. "You're incredible, you know that," she smiled. "I've been told. Now about those bodyguards you mentioned." By the end of the week, Zara had 2 of Min-jae's best men assigned to her, Tae-won and Sung-ho, both trained in close protection and utterly loyal to Min-jae. They followed her to work, to the gym, to weekend brunches with friends. It should have felt suffocating, but instead, she felt safer than ever. Min-jae also started teaching her about his world, not just the violence, but the structure, the alliances, the careful balance of power that kept Seoul's underworld from descending into all-out war. She met with him most evenings, either at his penthouse or secure restaurants, and he walked her through the intricacies of his empire. And through it all, their relationship deepened. He continued his small acts of devotion, sending her flowers, having his chef prepare her favorite foods, showing up unexpectedly just to see her. But now there was also strategy, partnership, a growing sense that they were building something together. One evening, after a long discussion about territorial boundaries, Zara found herself studying him across his desk. He'd removed his jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves, and was speaking passionately about supply chains and distribution networks. He was beautiful like this, animated, intelligent, completely unguarded with her. "What?" he asked, catching her staring. "You're sexy when you talk about logistics." He laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and warm. "You might be the only woman who's ever said that." "I'm definitely the only woman who means it in this context." She stood, crossing to him, and he swiveled his chair to face her. She stepped between his spread thighs, her hands resting on his shoulders. "Thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me with this, with all of it, for not treating me like I'm fragile." His hands came up to grip her hips, fingers digging into her curves possessively. "You're the strongest person I know, and the most dangerous, not to my enemies, but to me, to my heart." She leaned down, kissing him softly. The kiss quickly deepened, weeks of tension and growing intimacy igniting between them. His hands slid up her sides, and she straddled him in the chair, her dress riding up as she pressed against him. "Zara," he groaned against her lips. "If we don't stop now, I won't be able to." "Then don't stop." He stood abruptly, lifting her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist. He carried her to his bedroom, laying her on his bed like she was precious. They undressed each other slowly, savoring every revelation, every touch. When they finally came together, it was transcendent, slow and intense, his hands and mouth worshipping every curve, whispering Korean and English endearments against her skin. She arched beneath him, gasping his name, and he swore he'd never felt anything so perfect. Afterwards, wrapped in his arms, thoroughly loved, Zara felt complete in a way she never had before. Min-jae held her like she might disappear, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. "I love you," he whispered into the darkness. "I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you more than I thought I could love anything." "I love you too." She turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "We're going to be okay. We're going to survive this. Promise me something," he said, his voice urgent. "If something happens to me, If Park wins, you'll leave Seoul. Go back to Atlanta. Live your life. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." She saw the fear in his eyes, the trauma from losing Yara, the desperate need for assurance that she'd survive even if he didn't. "I promise, but nothing's going to happen. We're smarter than him." She woke to an empty bed. Panic seized her immediately. He'd pushed her away before. What if he was doing it again? What if last night was goodbye? She dressed quickly in one of his shirts, padding barefoot through the penthouse until she found him in his office, staring at nothing, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Min-jae?" He turned, and she saw the war in his eyes, love versus fear, desire versus the instinct to protect by pushing away. "You should go. Last night was—" "Don't." She crossed to him, furious and hurt. "Don't you dare push me away again. Don't you dare make last night meaningless. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection from you. I need you, all of you. The darkness, the danger, the love. I choose this. I choose you." He stared at her, this curvy, beautiful, stubborn woman who'd crashed into his life and refused to leave, who'd seen the worst of him and stayed anyway. "You're insane." "Probably, but I'm your insane." A laugh escaped him, surprised, genuine, helpless. "Yes, you're mine." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I won't push you away again. I can't. But you need to understand what this means. I'm possessive, jealous, and controlling. I'll want to know where you are, who you're with. I'll eliminate threats before they materialize. I'll be overbearing and intense." "I know." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "And I'll call you on your bullshit, push back when you're being ridiculous, and remind you that I'm strong enough to stand beside you. Not beside me." His voice was firm. "Behind me, protected." She rolled her eyes. "We'll negotiate." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and she felt his surrender in it, felt him letting go of the fear just enough to hold on to her. The following weeks were an adjustment. Min-jae was exactly as advertised, intensely possessive, showing up at her office unexpectedly with lunch or coffee, glaring at any man who looked at her too long, insisting she text him when she arrived anywhere safely. He had her move into his penthouse within 2 weeks, citing security concerns, but really just wanting her in his space, in his bed, within reach at all times. But he was also tender in ways that constantly surprised her. He remembered her favorite books and had first editions delivered. He learned to cook Nigerian jollof rice from YouTube videos, spending hours in the kitchen to get it right for her. He held her through nightmares about the kidnapping threat, whispering assurances in Korean and English until she fell back asleep. He also started teaching her self-defense. Every morning before work, they spent an hour in his private gym, and he taught her how to fight dirty, how to break holds, and where to strike to disable an attacker. Tae-won and Sung-ho taught her to shoot at his private range, and she discovered she had natural talent with a handgun. "You're a quick learner," Min-jae said one morning after she'd successfully escaped his hold and put him on his back. Pride shone in his eyes as he looked up at her. "I'm motivated." She offered him a hand up. "Besides, I like seeing you on your back." His eyes darkened with desire. "Careful, or we won't make it to work today." Would that be so bad? It wasn't. They spent the morning in bed instead, and Min-jae rearranged his entire schedule without a second thought. One evening, they attended a charity gala together, their first major public appearance as a couple. The event was at a luxury hotel in Gangnam, attended by Seoul's elite, business leaders, politicians, and carefully laundered criminals like Min-jae, who donated enough money to buy respectability. Zara wore a stunning gold dress that hugged every curve, custom made by a designer Min-jae had commissioned specifically for her. The dress celebrated her body rather than trying to minimize it, and she felt powerful and beautiful as they entered the ballroom together. Min-jae couldn't take his eyes off her. His hand stayed possessively on her lower back as they navigated the crowd, and she felt the stares, heard the whispers. The Reaper had brought a date. The cold, untouchable Kang Min-jae was clearly besotted with this curvy foreign woman who was so different from his delicate, traditionally beautiful, late wife. "They're staring," Zara murmured. "Let them. You're the most beautiful woman here." His voice was low, intimate. "And you're mine. I want everyone to know it." They mingled carefully, Min-jae introducing her to various business associates, some legitimate, others clearly part of his underworld network. Zara handled it all with grace, her consulting experience making her comfortable in these social situations. She was discussing African market expansion with a tech CEO when Min-jae excused himself to get drinks. The moment he was gone, she felt someone slide up beside her, too close, invading her personal space. "You're stunning," the man said smoothly. She recognized him from Min-jae's briefings. Kim Tae-yang, a wealthy businessman with ties to several criminal organizations, known for his wandering hands and aggressive pursuit of women. "I don't believe we've met." Kim Tae-yang. "I'm here with someone." Zara smiled politely but distantly, taking a small step back. "Then he's a lucky man." Tae-yang moved closer again, his eyes roaming over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "But perhaps we could have lunch sometime. I'm always interested in meeting beautiful, intelligent women, especially ones with your assets." Before Zara could respond, with the sharp retort forming on her tongue, Min-jae appeared. He handed her a drink with one hand while the other settled possessively, almost aggressively, on her waist, pulling her against his side. "She's not interested." His voice was deadly soft, the tone that usually preceded violence. Tae-yang blanched, finally recognizing Min-jae. "My apologies, Kang-si. I didn't realize—" "Now you do." Min-jae's eyes were glacial, promising retribution. "Leave. And if I ever see you within 10 feet of her again, I'll cut out your eyes and feed them to you. Understood?" Tae-yang practically ran away, disappearing into the crowd. The few people who'd overheard the exchange suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. After he was gone, Zara turned to Min-jae with raised eyebrows. "Really? That was a bit much. He was looking at you like you were his next acquisition, like you were something he could buy or take." Min-jae's jaw was tight with barely controlled fury. "You're not an acquisition. You're mine, and no one touches what's mine." "Possessive much?" "Always." He pulled her closer, his eyes still dark with jealousy. "Get used to it. I don't share. I don't play games, and I eliminate competition, permanently if necessary." She should have been disturbed by the threat, by his overwhelming possessiveness. Instead, she felt heat pool low in her belly, felt a thrill at his jealous devotion. "You're ridiculous." "You love it." She did. God help her, she really did. They left the gala early, Min-jae unable to keep his hands off her during the car ride home. They barely made it through the penthouse door before he was on her, pressing her against the wall, kissing her with bruising intensity. "Mine," he growled against her lips. "Say it." "Yours," she gasped as his hands roamed her body possessively. He made love to her against the wall, still partially dressed, desperate and claiming. Later, in bed, he was gentler, worshipping her body with hands and mouth until she was boneless and satisfied. "I'm sorry I threatened him," he said quietly in the darkness, though he didn't sound particularly sorry. "But I can't stand seeing other men look at you that way." "I know. Just try not to actually kill anyone over me, okay?" "I'll try. No promises." A few days later, danger struck without warning. Zara was shopping in Myeongdong with Amara, Taiwan and Sung-ho following at a discreet distance when gunfire erupted. Someone was shooting from a rooftop, clearly aimed at Zara. Taewon tackled her to the ground, covering her body with his, as bullets struck the pavement around them. Sung-ho returned fire, trying to locate the shooter. Screams filled the air as civilians ran for cover. The shooting lasted less than a minute, but it felt like hours. When it finally stopped, Taewon carefully helped Zara up, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm Amara." Zara looked around frantically for her friend. Amara was on the ground, clutching her arm where a bullet had grazed her. Not life-threatening, but bleeding heavily. Zara rushed to her, pressing her hands against the wound while Sung-ho called for backup and medical assistance. "I'm okay," Amara said through gritted teeth. "Just a scratch." But Zara was shaking violently, the reality of what had just happened crashing over her. Someone had tried to kill her. Her friend had been shot because of her. This wasn't theoretical danger anymore. This was real blood, real bullets, real consequences. Min-jae arrived at the hospital before the ambulance even finished unloading. He burst through the emergency room doors like an avenging angel, his face white with terror that quickly morphed into fury when he saw Zara sitting in the waiting room, blood on her clothes. Amara's blood, but he didn't know that yet. "Are you hurt?" His hands were on her immediately, checking her face, her arms, her body for injuries. "I'm fine. It's Amara's blood. She was grazed, but she'll be okay." Relief flooded his features for approximately 2 seconds before rage replaced it. This was Park. It had to be. "Min-jae, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna burn his entire organization to the ground and salt the fucking earth." His voice was shaking with fury. "He went after you. He shot at you in broad daylight in a crowded shopping district. But I'm okay. Your men protected me. This time." The words exploded from him. What about next time? What if Taiwan had been a second slower? What if the shooter had better aim? He pulled her against him roughly, desperately. "I can't lose you. I can't go through that again." Zara held him tightly, feeling him shake. This was his nightmare come to life. History repeating, another woman he loved in danger because of his world. Jae-sung appeared, his expression grim. "Boss, we found the shooter. He's alive, waiting for your instructions." Min-jae's eyes went cold and dead in a way that made even Zara shiver. This was the Reaper, the man who'd built an empire on corpses. "Good. I'll deal with him personally." "Min-jae, don't." Zara grabbed his arm. "Don't go down that road. We're smarter than this, remember. We use strategy, not just violence." "They shot at you." Each word was bitten off, barely controlled. "Strategy doesn't apply anymore. This is war." "Then fight it smart. Killing his hired gun won't stop Park. We need to think bigger." He stared at her, war raging in his eyes between the need for immediate, violent revenge and the knowledge that she was right. Finally, he nodded. "We question him, find out everything. Then we use that information to destroy Park completely." Later that night, after Amara had been treated and was resting comfortably with round-the-clock protection, Min-jae and Zara returned to the penthouse. He'd been silent during the drive, his hand gripping hers almost painfully tight. Inside, he pulled her into his arms, just holding her for long minutes. She felt tremors running through his body, felt the depth of his fear. "I thought I lost you today," he whispered finally. "When Jae-sung called, when he said there'd been shooting, I thought history was repeating. I thought I was going to find you like I found Yara. But you didn't. I'm here. I'm safe. This time." He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "Zara, I need you to understand something. I'm going to end this. Whatever it takes, however bloody it gets, I'm going to eliminate every threat to you. And I won't be clean about it. I won't be the good guy. I know who you are. I've always known. And you still stay? I still stay." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, needing the physical confirmation that she was alive, that she was his. They made love with desperate intensity, Min-jae worshipping her body like he was afraid she'd disappear, whispering promises and threats in Korean against her skin, promises to protect her, threats against anyone who tried to harm her. Afterwards, as she drifted toward sleep in his arms, she heard him on the phone, speaking rapid Korean. She caught enough words to understand. He was mobilizing his entire organization, calling in every favor, preparing for war. Park had made a fatal mistake. He'd gone after Min-jae's heart, and now the Reaper was coming for him. The following morning, Min-jae laid out his plan. They sat in his secure office, Jae-sung and his top lieutenants present, along with Zara, because he'd promised not to shut her out, and he kept his promises to her. "We have Park's shooter," Min Jae began, his voice cold and controlled. "He's given us valuable intelligence. Park is planning something bigger, a coordinated attack on multiple fronts. He wants to take me down publicly, humiliate me before killing me." "When?" Jae-sung asked. 2 weeks, during the summit. The summit was an annual meeting of Seoul's major crime families, a neutral gathering where territories were negotiated and disputes mediated. "He's planning to accuse me of violating agreements, turn the other families against me, then move in for the kill when I'm isolated." "So we don't go to the summit," one lieutenant suggested. "No." Zara spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. "We go, but we go prepared. We expose him first, turn his strategy against him." Min Jae looked at her with pride and love. "Explain." "Park's been building alliances, right? Making promises to other families about what they'll get when you're gone. But what if those promises are lies? What if we can prove he's been playing both sides, that he'll betray them the moment he has power?" "We'd need evidence," Jae-sung said thoughtfully. "Recorded conversations, documentation." "Then we get it." Zara looked at Min Jae. "You said his weakness is pride. He underestimates people, especially women. Use that." Understanding dawned on Min Jae's face, followed immediately by resistance. "Absolutely not. You are not going anywhere near Park." "I'm not suggesting I do this personally, but someone he underestimates needs to get close to him. Someone unexpected." They spent hours refining the plan. It was risky, required perfect timing, and could backfire spectacularly. But it was also their best chance at ending this permanently without descending into all-out war that would cost countless lives. A week later, Zara attended a gallery opening. Public, safe, covered by Min Jae's men, but not obviously so. Park attended the same event, as expected. He approached her while she studied a painting, his smile oily and confident. "Miss Johnson, I was sorry to hear about the incident in Myeongdong. Random violence is such a tragedy." "There was nothing random about it," Zara said coldly. "We both know you ordered it." "Such accusations." He stepped closer. "But since we're being honest, let me make you an offer. Leave Kang Min Jae, publicly, dramatically. I'll ensure your safety and pay you handsomely. Stay, and I'll kill you both." "Why wait 2 weeks, then? Why not kill us now?" Park's expression flickered, surprised that she knew his timeline. "I see he's shared more with you than I thought. All the more reason for you to leave. When he falls at the summit, anyone associated with him will fall too." "Or," Zara said carefully, her heart pounding but her voice steady, "maybe you're not as secure as you think. Maybe those alliances you've built are shakier than they appear." She walked away, leaving him unsettled. As planned, she'd planted seeds of doubt, made him paranoid about his own organization. Over the next week, those seeds bore fruit. Min Jae's intelligence network reported increasing instability in Park's alliance. Arguments, demands for reassurance, suspicion growing among his partners. The night before the summit, Min Jae couldn't sleep. He stood at his penthouse windows, staring out at Seoul's glittering lights, Zara wrapped in a robe behind him. "We could run," he said quietly. "Take our resources and disappear. Start over somewhere else." "You don't mean that." "No, I don't, but I'm terrified of tomorrow. If something goes wrong, if I miscalculate..." He turned to face her. "You should stay here. Let me handle this alone." "We've been over this. I'm going." "Zara, no." She crossed to him, taking his hands. "We're partners. We do this together. Besides, you need me there. Park underestimates me, and that's our advantage." He pulled her close, breathing in her scent. "If anything happens to you..." "It won't. We're smarter than him, remember? We're going to win." "Promise me something," he said, echoing their earlier conversation. "If things go wrong, if I tell you to run, you run. No arguing, no hesitating. You get to safety." "Min Jae, promise me, Zara, please." She saw the desperate fear in his eyes, the trauma from losing Yara warring with his love for her. "I promise, but it won't come to that." They made love that night with desperate tenderness, both aware that tomorrow could change everything, could be the beginning of their future, or the end of everything they'd built. The summit took place in a traditional hanok converted into a private venue in Bukchon. The meeting room was elegant, with low tables arranged in a circle where the heads of Seoul's major criminal organizations sat with their seconds. Min-jae entered with Jae-sung and 2 other trusted men. Zara stayed back initially, watching from a secure location via hidden cameras, ready to move when needed. Park was already there, confident and smiling. "Kung-si, I wasn't sure you'd come. I never run from threats." The meeting began with standard business: territorial disputes, profit-sharing agreements, negotiations over new ventures. But tension hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew something was coming. Finally, Park made his move. "I have serious concerns about Kang-si's leadership. He's become unstable, compromised by his relationship with a foreign woman. He's making emotional decisions that endanger us all." Murmurs around the table. Min-jae remained impassive. "Furthermore," Park continued, gaining confidence, "I have evidence that he's been skimming profits from joint ventures, enriching himself at our expense." He produced documents, cleverly forged, but convincing enough to raise doubts. Min-jae felt the room shifting, suspicion growing. "Interesting accusations," Min-jae said calmly. "Do you have proof beyond forged documents?" "These aren't forged." "They are. But more interesting is your hypocrisy." Min-jae nodded to Jae-sung, who began playing audio recordings, conversations between Park and various crime bosses where he promised the same territories to multiple people, where he discussed betraying allies the moment he had power, where he laughed about using everyone as pawns. The room exploded in angry voices. Park's face went white, then red with fury. "Those are fabricated." "They're verified," Min-jae said coldly. "Voice analysis, metadata, all authenticated by independent experts. You've been playing everyone in this room, Park. You wanted my position so badly you were willing to destroy everything our families built." But Park wasn't finished. He pulled a gun, a violation of summit rules, and aimed it directly at Min-jae. "Then I'll take what I want by force." The room erupted into chaos. Park's allies drew weapons. Min-jae's did the same. But Park wasn't aiming for Min-jae anymore. "I know she's here," Park snarled. "Your weakness. I'll kill her right in front of you, just like before." That's when Zara walked in, flanked by Tae-won and Seung-ho, wearing a bulletproof vest under her elegant suit. Every gun in the room swiveled toward her. "You want to kill me?" she said calmly, though her heart was racing. "Then you'll have to shoot through every one of Min-jae's men, and even if you succeed, you've already lost. Everyone here has heard the truth about you. Your alliances are broken. Your reputation is destroyed. You're finished, Park." Park's hand shook on the gun, rage and desperation warring in his expression. Min-jae stood slowly, positioning himself between Park and Zara. "It's over," Min-jae said quietly. "Put down the gun and leave with your life. That's more mercy than you deserve." For a long moment, Park didn't move. Then, with a roar of fury, he aimed at Zara and fired. Everything happened in seconds. Min-jae dove toward Zara, tackling her to the ground. The bullet hit his shoulder instead of her chest. Tae-won and Seung-ho returned fire, as did several other family's men who saw Park's violation of summit rules as an inexcusable offense. Park went down in a hail of bullets, his body jerking before falling still. Silence fell like a shroud. Min-jae was bleeding heavily, his shoulder torn apart by Park's bullet. Zara crawled to him, pressing her hands against the wound, tears streaming down her face. "You idiot! You promised not to die for me." "Didn't die," he gasped, pain white-hot across his features. "Just got shot. Big difference." "Ambulance is coming," Jae-sung said, already on the phone. "Boss, stay with us." "Not going anywhere. Min-jae's eyes focused on Zara. You're safe. That's all. That matters. The other crime bosses were dealing with Park's body, with his remaining men who'd surrendered immediately. The verdict was clear. Park had violated every code, every rule. His organization would be dismantled, his resources divided among the families. Min-jae had won, but as Zara held him, watching his blood seep through her fingers, victory felt hollow. The surgery took 6 hours. The bullet had shattered his shoulder but missed major arteries. The doctors said he was lucky. An inch to the left and he would have bled out before reaching the hospital. Zara stayed by his bedside through his recovery, refusing to leave despite his attempts to send her away. She held his hand through pain medication haze, changed his bandages, helped him with physical therapy as his shoulder healed. "You saved my life," she said one evening, 2 weeks after the summit. He was healing well, the shoulder stiff but functional. "I'd do it again." His voice was firm despite his weakness. "Every time. I'll always protect you." "I know, but I wish you didn't have to. I wish we could just be normal." "We'll never be normal." He squeezed her hand gently. "But we can be happy, safe, together." "Is it really over? Is Park's organization gone?" "Dismantled completely. His remaining men have scattered or joined other families. The territory is divided. And everyone knows you're mine, that harming you means war with everyone who sided with me at the summit." He paused. "Which was everyone." Relief flooded through her. "So we're safe?" "As safe as we can be in this world." He pulled her closer, careful of his shoulder. "Zara, I know this life isn't what you imagined, but I promise to spend every day making it worth staying, making you happy. You already make me happy. Terrified sometimes, but happy." He laughed, then winced. "Don't make me laugh. Hurts." "Good. Maybe you'll think twice before taking bullets for me." "Not a chance." 3 months later, Min-jae threw a party at his penthouse, a celebration of his recovery and the new peace in Seoul's underworld. Zara wore a stunning red dress, her natural hair styled in elegant twists, and moved through the crowd with grace and confidence. She'd become a fixture in Min-jae's world, respected and even feared in her own right. She'd used her consulting expertise to help legitimize several of his business operations, opening new markets and increasing profits legally. She was his partner in every sense, business, strategy, and love. As the party wound down and guests departed, Min-jae pulled her onto the empty terrace overlooking the city. Seoul glittered below them, full of promise and danger in equal measure. "I have something for you," he said, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never seen him. He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, the stone surrounded by smaller rubies that caught the light like drops of blood and fire. "Zara Johnson," he said, dropping to one knee despite his still healing shoulder. "You've made me believe in happiness again. You've made me want to be more than just the Reaper, more than just my father's legacy. You've given me purpose beyond power. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, God, yes. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring on her finger, then stood, pulling her into a kiss that was tender and possessive all at once. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I promise to protect you, provide for you, and love you for the rest of my life. You're mine, and I'm yours, forever." "Forever," she echoed, believing it. They married 6 weeks later in a private ceremony that blended Korean and Nigerian traditions. Zara wore a white dress for the Western ceremony, then changed into traditional Korean hanbok and Nigerian iro and buba for the cultural celebrations. Min-jae's organization attended alongside Zara's family, who'd flown in from Atlanta. Her mother had been skeptical of Min-jae initially, but he'd won her over with respectful persistence and obvious devotion to her daughter. "You take care of my baby," her mother had warned him the night before. "With my life," he'd promised. "She's my everything." The ceremony was beautiful, emotional, and filled with the kind of joy both of them thought they'd never find. When Min-jae kissed his bride, when he swept her up and carried her down the aisle while their guests cheered, Zara felt complete in a way she never had before. This dangerous, broken man had become her home, and she'd become his salvation. Their honeymoon was spent at a private resort in Jeju Island, where Min-jae had rented out an entire villa for 2 weeks. They spent their days exploring the island, eating fresh seafood, and making love with the desperate passion of people who'd almost lost each other. One morning, as they lay tangled in sheets, Min-jae traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "I want to tell you something. About Yara." Zara tensed slightly but nodded, knowing this conversation had been coming. "When I first saw you, I thought you were her ghost. Thought I was losing my mind. But you're not her replacement, Zara. You're your own person, and I love you for who you are, not because you remind me of her." "I know. Do you?" "Because I need you to understand, what I feel for you is different from what I felt for her. Yara was my first love, gentle and sweet. But you're my equal, my partner. You challenge me, push me to be better, and stand beside me in ways she never could. I love you more than I ever thought possible." Tears pricked her eyes. "I love you too, and I don't mind that you loved her. She made you who you are, and that's the man I fell in love with." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and they made love slowly, savoring every touch, every whispered endearment. 6 months into their marriage, Zara started feeling ill in the mornings. At first, she thought it was food poisoning or stress from helping Min-jae expand his legitimate businesses. But when the symptoms persisted, Amara dragged her to a doctor. The pregnancy test came back positive. Zara sat in the bathroom of their penthouse, staring at the positive test, her hands shaking. Min-jae had made comments about wanting children someday, but they'd never seriously discussed it. His world was still dangerous, still unpredictable. Was it fair to bring a child into this? But beneath the fear was overwhelming joy. She was carrying Min-jae's baby, a perfect combination of their love. When Min-jae came home that evening, she met him at the door with the test. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at her, and she saw tears streaming down his face. "We're having a baby?" His voice cracked with emotion. "We're having a baby." He lifted her effortlessly, spinning her around with a shout of joy that probably woke the neighbors. When he set her down, he dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against her still flat stomach. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered to their unborn child. "To either of you, I swear it on my life. You'll be safe, loved, protected always." "We know," Zara said, running her fingers through his hair. "You're going to be an amazing father." He looked up at her, eyes still wet with tears. "I'm terrified. What if I can't protect you both? What if something happens?" "Nothing will happen. We're safe now. Park is gone, your position is secure, and you have an entire organization sworn to protect your family." She knelt to his level, cupping his face. "We're going to be okay, all 3 of us." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Min-jae was, as predicted, overbearing and paranoid to the point of being nearly insufferable. He hired a full medical team who were on call 24 hours a day. He installed security systems that rivaled presidential protection. He vetted every person who came within 10 feet of Zara. He rarely let her out of his sight, and when work demanded his attention elsewhere, he left Taiwan and Sung-ho as permanent shadows. "I'm pregnant, not dying," Zara said after he vetoed her plan to visit the grocery store personally. "You're carrying my entire world. I won't risk either of you." She wanted to be annoyed, wanted to insist on her independence, but she saw the raw terror in his eyes every time he looked at her growing belly, saw the memories of Yara haunting him. He was terrified of history repeating itself, terrified of losing another person he loved. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised for the 1,000th time, taking his hand and placing it on her belly where their daughter was kicking. "We're both here, safe, yours." He pulled her close, careful of her belly, and she felt him trembling. "Mine," he whispered. My family. My everything. Zara's mother flew in for the last month of pregnancy, bringing warmth and practical help that even Minjai appreciated. She taught him how to change diapers on a doll, how to swaddle properly, and how to calm a crying baby. She also gave Zara the support and motherly wisdom she desperately needed. "He's a good man," her mother said one afternoon while they prepped the nursery. A beautiful room Minjai had designed himself, combining Korean and Nigerian cultural elements. "Dangerous, yes, but good to you. That's what matters." "You're not worried about raising a grandchild in this world?" Her mother smiled. "Baby, every world is dangerous in its own way. At least here, you have a man willing to burn everything down to keep you safe, and you have each other. That's more than most people get." Their daughter was born on a rainy April morning after 16 hours of labor that nearly drove Minjay insane with worry. He stayed by Zara's side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragements, looking absolutely terrified but refusing to leave even when the nurses suggested he step out. When their daughter finally arrived, tiny and perfect and wailing with indignation, Minjay burst into tears. The nurses placed her on Zara's chest, and they both stared in wonder at this impossible miracle they'd created. "She's perfect," Minjay whispered, his hand gently touching their daughter's tiny head. "You're both perfect." Their daughter had Zara's dark skin and beautiful features, but Minjay's eyes, dark and intelligent, already seeming to take in the world around her. They named her Jiwon Amara Kang, honoring both their cultures. Minjay held her for the first time with trembling hands, looking down at his daughter with an expression of such profound love and terror that Zara started crying all over again. "I promise to protect you always," he whispered to Jiwon, "to give you the world, to keep you safe, to love you and your mother more than life itself. You're my heart, both of you." Jiwon wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, and Minjay was completely, irrevocably lost. The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and beautiful in equal measure. Minjay was surprisingly good with Jiwon, getting up for night feedings without complaint, changing diapers with the same efficiency he brought to running a criminal empire, singing Korean lullabies while pacing the nursery at 3 in the morning. Watching him be so gentle with their daughter, so openly loving and vulnerable, made Zara fall in love with him all over again. This was a side of him no one else saw, the dangerous reaper reduced to putty by a 7-pound baby girl. "You're staring," he said one night, catching her watching as he rocked Jiwon to sleep. "You're beautiful with her. She's beautiful, period. Takes after her mother. She has your eyes, your stubbornness, too, I suspect." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile he only showed her, and now their daughter. God help us, both then. On Jiwon's first birthday, they threw a lavish party that combined Korean-style doll celebration with Nigerian traditions. The penthouse was filled with family, friends, and carefully vetted members of Minjay's organization who came to pay respects to the boss's daughter. Jiwon wore a traditional hanbok and sat before the doljabi table, surrounded by objects that would supposedly predict her future. She grabbed the money first, financial success, making everyone laugh. Then she grabbed the book, intelligence and scholarship. But what made Minjay's eyes shine with pride and terror was when she grabbed the toy gun one of his men had jokingly added. "Well," Jae-sung said with a grin, "looks like she takes after her father." "She's going to give me a heart attack, isn't she?" Minjay said, but he was smiling as he swept his daughter up into his arms. Later that evening, after guests had left and Jiwon was sleeping peacefully in her crib, Minjay and Zara stood on their terrace, watching Seoul's lights glitter in the darkness. 3 years ago, I was dead inside, Minjay said quietly, pulling Zara against his side. "I thought I'd lost everything worth living for. And then you walked into that club and everything changed." Zara leaned into him, her hand finding his. "I was lost, too. New city, new country, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. Then this terrifying, beautiful man looked at me like I was his whole world. You are my whole world. You and Jiwon. He turned to face her fully, his hands cupping her face. I know this life isn't easy. I know there are still dangers, still threats, but we've survived everything thrown at us, and we'll keep surviving because we're stronger together. We are. She kissed him softly. I love you, Min-jae, my dangerous, devoted, impossible husband. I love you more. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Thank you for not running that first night. Thank you for seeing past the monster everyone else sees. Thank you for giving me a family, a future, a reason to be more than what my father made me. Thank you for protecting me, loving me, showing me what real partnership looks like. She paused, a small smile playing on her lips. And thank you for being the most overbearing, possessive, wonderfully devoted man I've ever met. He laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. I'll never change on that front. You're mine, Zara, forever. Forever, she agreed, believing it with her whole heart. 6 months later, Zara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with slightly less panic from Min-jae, slightly, and more immediate joy. Jiwon was walking now, chattering in a mix of Korean and English, and the idea of giving her a sibling filled them both with happiness. A boy this time, Min-jae predicted, his hand on Zara's belly, where their second child was growing. I can feel it. You said that last time, and we got Jiwon. And I was blessed beyond measure. But this time, I'm right. He wasn't. Their second daughter, Soo-min Grace, was born 8 months later during a gentle summer rain. She had Zara's smile and Min-jae's stubborn determination, and she completed their family in ways they hadn't known they needed. Jiwon was fascinated by her baby sister, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bottle feedings. Min-jae watched his daughters with an expression of such profound contentment that Zara often found herself tearing up. 2 daughters, he said one evening, holding Soo-min while Jiwon played at his feet. I'm going to have to kill every boy in Seoul when they're older. You will do no such thing, Zara said firmly, though she was smiling. You'll teach them to be strong, independent women who can protect themselves. I'll do both. His expression was utterly serious. They'll be able to fight, shoot, negotiate, and manipulate like the best of my organization. But I'll still kill any boy who looks at them wrong. You're impossible. I'm their father. It's my job. As the years passed, the Kang family grew into something beautiful and unexpected. Min-jae slowly transitioned more of his business interests into legitimate ventures, using Zara's expertise to expand into international markets. He never fully left the underworld. Men like him couldn't, not really. But he insulated his family from the worst of it. Jiwon and Soo-min grew up bilingual and bicultural, comfortable in both Korean and Nigerian traditions. They attended the best schools, protected by discreet security that they barely noticed. They knew their father was powerful and feared, but to them, he was just Appa, the man who read them bedtime stories, taught them taekwondo, and could be wrapped around their little fingers with a single smile. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Min-jae surprised Zara with a trip to Atlanta to visit her family. They spent 2 weeks in the Georgia heat, their daughters running wild with their cousins, eating soul food and jollof rice, being thoroughly spoiled by their grandmother. On their last night, Min-jae and Zara sat on her mother's porch swing, the girls finally asleep after a long day of playing. You know what I realized? Zara said softly, her head on his shoulder. What's that? I used to think love was supposed to be safe, comfortable, easy. She lifted her head to look at him. But loving you taught me that real love is terrifying and dangerous and worth every risk. It's choosing each other every day, despite the threats, the fear, the chaos. I was so broken when I found you, Min-jae said, his voice thick with emotion. So convinced I didn't deserve happiness after Yara. But you didn't let me hide in my guilt and grief. You forced me to live again, to feel again. You saved me too, she reminded him. You made me brave, made me believe I was strong enough for anything. You were always strong. You just needed someone to see it. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to crickets and distant traffic, holding hands like teenagers. Do you ever regret it? Min-jae asked quietly. Choosing this life? Choosing me? Zara didn't even hesitate. Never. Not for a single second. You're my home, Min-jae. You and our girls. This dangerous, impossible, beautiful life we've built. I wouldn't trade it for anything. He kissed her then, soft and reverent, and she tasted gratitude and love and devotion in equal measure. Years continued to pass, and the Kang family's legend grew in Seoul's underworld, not just as a powerful crime family, but as proof that love could survive even in the darkest places. Young criminals looked at Min-jae's devoted marriage and beautiful family and dared to hope they, too, might find something beyond violence and money. Ji-won grew into a brilliant teenager with her father's strategic mind and her mother's diplomatic skills. She talked about law school, about using her position to change the system from within. Min-jae was terrified and proud in equal measure. Soo-min was more artistic, passionate about music and painting, but she had inherited her father's protective instincts and her mother's strength. She'd already beaten up 3 boys who'd tried to bully classmates, earning her father's approval and her mother's exasperated lectures about using her words first. On their 10th anniversary, Min-jae and Zara renewed their vows in a ceremony that was even more elaborate than their first wedding. Their daughters stood as junior bridesmaids, beaming with pride as their parents promised to love each other for another lifetime. 10 years ago, you were a stranger who looked at me like I was a ghost, Zara said during her vows, tears streaming down her face. Today, you're my husband, my partner, my best friend. You've given me a family, a home, a love I never imagined possible. I choose you today, tomorrow, and for all our remaining days. Min-jae's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke. 10 years ago, I was a dead man walking, convinced happiness died with my first wife. Then you crashed into my life and refused to let me hide in darkness. You taught me that love isn't betrayal, that healing isn't forgetting, that I deserved a second chance. You gave me daughters, purpose, joy. Every day with you is a gift I never expected and will never take for granted. I love you more than life itself, Zara. You're my miracle. There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. On a quiet evening 5 years after their vow renewal, Min-jae sat in his study, now mostly filled with legitimate business documents and family photos rather than weapons and illegal manifests. He was 50 years old, his hair showing distinguished gray at the temples, his shoulder still aching in cold weather from Park's bullet. Zara entered with tea, settling into the chair across from his desk like she had countless times over their 15 years together. Their daughters were at a sleepover, the penthouse unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, seeing his contemplative expression. "How different my life could have been. How I almost pushed you away that morning after we first made love. How one different choice would have cost me everything. But you didn't push me away. We chose each other." "Every day," he agreed. "Even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when it would have been easier to walk away." She moved to sit on his lap, careful of his old injury, and he wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. At 43, she was even more beautiful than the night he'd first seen her. Curves more pronounced, confidence radiating from every pore, wisdom etched in the faint lines around her eyes. "Do you know what I think about?" she asked, playing with his hair. "How I almost didn't go to that club that night. Amara had to drag me out. I was tired, wanted to stay home. One different choice, and we never would have met." "Fate," Min-jae said firmly. "It was always meant to be. You were always meant to save me." "We saved each other." He kissed her, still hungry for her after 15 years, still amazed that she was his. "Come to bed. It's only 8 o'clock. I don't care." His eyes darkened with familiar desire. "Our daughters are gone. The house is quiet, and I want my wife." She laughed, but let him lead her to their bedroom, where they made love with the comfortable passion of long married couples who still craved each other desperately. Afterwards, wrapped in sheets and each other, Zara traced the scar on his shoulder, the permanent reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. "I'm grateful for this scar," Minjai said, catching her hand. "It reminds me of what matters, that protecting you, protecting our family, is worth any price." "You've paid enough prices," she said softly. "No more bullets, no more danger. Just us, growing old together, watching our daughters build their own lives." "Just us," he agreed, "for all our remaining days." 25 years after that first night in the club, Minjae stood in their penthouse, now partially converted into an art studio for Soo Min's work and a law office for Ji-won, who'd followed through on her dream of becoming a prosecutor, specializing in organized crime reform. He was 63, officially retired from active leadership of his organization, but still consulted on major decisions. Zara was 56. Running a successful international consulting firm that helped Korean companies expand into African markets. They were grandparents now. Ji-won had married a kind lawyer and had a son, while Soo Min was engaged to a musician who'd won Min Jae's grudging approval. "Come look at this," Zara called from the living room. He found her standing at the windows, watching the sunset, paint Seoul in shades of gold and crimson. She was gray-haired now, her curves more pronounced. With age, her face lined with decades of laughter and love. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "What am I looking at?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Our city, our life, everything we built." She leaned back against him. 25 years ago, if someone had told me I'd end up married to a Korean gangster, living in Seoul, raising 2 incredible daughters and now spoiling grandchildren, I would have laughed in their face. If someone had told me I'd love again after Yara, that I'd be this happy, I would have shot them. He rested his chin on her head. "But here we are." "Here we are," she echoed, "still choosing each other. Always." Their grandson's laughter echoed from the playroom where he was spending the afternoon with them. In a few hours, their family would gather for dinner. Daughters, son-in-law, future son-in-law, grandchild, and whatever chaos came with them. This was Minji's empire now, not territory and violence, but family and love. Not fear and respect, but devotion and joy. He'd been the Reaper once, death walking in expensive suits. Now he was Appa, Harabioji, husband, the man who'd been saved by a woman with his dead wife's face and a spirit entirely her own. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" Minjae asked softly. "At the gallery, when I told you everyone I love dies?" "I said maybe I was stronger than you thought." "You were. You are." He turned her to face him, cupping her beloved face in his weathered hands. "You were strong enough to love a broken man, strong enough to survive my world, strong enough to build this family from ashes and second chances." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "We did it together. We did it together," he agreed, kissing her softly. "And I'd do it all again. Every dangerous moment, every terrifying choice, every battle, if it meant ending up here with you." "Me too," she whispered. 1,000 times, I'd choose you." That evening, as their family gathered around the dinner table, loud and loving and chaotic, Minjae looked around at everything he'd built. His daughters, strong and brilliant, are making their own marks on the world. His grandson, innocent and joyful, was untouched by the darkness that had defined Minjae's youth. His future son-in-law, nervous but sincere. His son-in-law, steady and kind. And Zara, at the head of the table opposite him, laughing at something Soo Min said, her eyes crinkling with joy, was still the most magnificent thing in his world. Their eyes met across the chaos, and a lifetime of love, struggle, danger, and devotion passed between them in a single glance. She raised her wine glass slightly, a private toast, and he mirrored the gesture. To survival, to second chances, to love that conquered death and darkness. to the miracle of finding each other in a crowded club 25 years ago and choosing each other every day since, to their impossible, beautiful, dangerous, perfect love story. Min-jae smiled, that rare, genuine smile reserved only for his family, and drank. He'd been dead once, a ghost walking through life, convinced happiness was buried with Yara. Then Zara had appeared like an impossibility, like fate's second chance, and taught him that hearts could be resurrected, that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that the most broken souls could find redemption in the arms of the right person. She'd been his salvation, his resurrection, his miracle. And he'd been hers, her protector, her partner, her passionate, possessive, devoted husband who'd burn the world down to keep her safe. Together, they'd built something neither thought possible. A family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. And it all started with a frozen moment in a club when a dead man's heart started beating again.